Thank you. If you could let us know when you have made a decision. Thank you. Rushanara.
Thank you. Good morning. Most of my questions are about customer complaints against the FOS. We've seen the share of complaints due to adequacy of investigation increase from 13% in 2020 to 2021 up to 35% in 21-22. And the independent assessor, Gillian Guy, notes that the adequacy in investigation is the single most complained about issue and possibly the most concerning, as investigating complaints is the very core of the service's function and legitimacy. In more, just to pick out some of the things that she referred to on communication, not informing customers in detail why cases have been put on hold, not responding to emails promptly and at times not at all, not returning customer calls, tone of telephone calls, timeliness, failure to request for evidence information needed at the same time, multiple case handlers being allocated, needing to start the investigation afresh, and on occasion too long with Ombudsman without any visible progression. These issues are echoes of things that I certainly have come across with the FOS for years. And time and again, I've been on this committee for a number of years in multiple parliaments. Time and again, your predecessor chairs, predecessor CEOs have assured us that you'd get a grip on these issues. You haven't. What can you say about that, and what are you going to do to get a grip?
Can I start off first by saying I do think we have got a grip, but I do recognise the comments that you have read out, and they will not entirely go away. But what I can say as chairman of the board, that we are totally sighted on these, and we, the team, have action plans in place to actually deliver on those. And you have to look at the reality of the numbers and put it into context as well. You know, we deal with, as I said earlier on, around this year, 205,000 cases, resolutions, and the numbers there from those 550 cases, you're looking at a very subset again. That's not to say that we're not taking it very seriously. We do. And it's very regrettable, and we're very sorry when things don't go.
Baroness,
no, I know, but please do let me finish.
I'm asking the questions with respect.
I was answering your question.
Well, you can finish answering in a second, but I just wanted to add something in terms of what your predecessors assured us, that when the FOS took on additional responsibilities that the government asked the FOS to do, that the FOS was in good shape, in a good position to deal with those, and that the very point you're making right now about volume of work would not be an issue. You're telling me, not your comments, the comments of your predecessors, you're now telling me that's exactly one of the issues. So if you could take that into account and respond, I'd be very grateful.
Well, I think I am taking it into account, and I think we have made a difference, and I think we can demonstrate quite clearly the improvements that have been made, and you've heard that through the hearing. But I think, Abby, do you want to say something a bit more?
I think just to elaborate a little on the Baroness's point, I don't think you were implying that because we have 205,000 resolutions, that means we can afford to let our standards slip. I think you're saying there's a very small number of cases that have been referred to the independent assessor. And actually, I would call out that the percentage that the independent assessor, who is genuinely independent, has deemed to be satisfactory, has gone up in the last year. So there is some positives there. Nonetheless,
do you think you're clutching at straws?
I think that we should get quicker. I absolutely think we need to be quicker on average, and many of those timeliness and communication and multiple handoff points that you're calling out will occur far less frequency. I think I may say, Chair, I think we're united in that we'll never have no complaints, but we should see a significant improvement in our handling.
Yeah, I mean, you're
look,
relatively
it's regrettable.
New.
I know, but look, it's regrettable when things go wrong, and we're talking about consumers. We're not talking about that these are consumers that are affected. And of course, where we can make a difference, we want to make a difference. And of course, the organisation wants to learn from its mistakes. And I spoke earlier on about the quality assurance programme. We spoke earlier about the mathematical modelling to do spot checks. Abby spoke earlier on regarding the different lines of defence. These are all areas that we've strengthened. We've strengthened training. We need to know that we don't have, lulls in hands-off. Of course they're important, but we can't promise that you'll never get an issue.
I'm sorry.
No, I know.
I'm not asking you to promise never to have complaints.
No, I'm saying I couldn't sit here and promise that invariably. But I just want to assure you that we take it very, very seriously, and I hope you'll also see that we've made significant progress in quite a number of areas too.
I think part of the problem is that you're relatively new to the FOS. Some of us have observed commitments and promises that your predecessors have made, and you're quite legitimately pointing out there are some additional pressures. Some of those pressures, there was a major inquiry into the FOS. There was discussion about whether the FOS is fit for purpose. We were reassured. I served on this committee at the time. We were reassured that it would be. And actually, you're right. Consumers are suffering. Our constituents are suffering. So it's not. What I'm trying to get to is what else. And these are questions I've asked in the past. What else does the FOS need to address some of the outstanding issues? Because they've been going on for years, long before you joined the FOS, with respect. And so I would really appreciate a focus on what else can be done so that consumers can have a better experience. Because actually, you are the last line of defence when people have gone from pillar to post after having had poor treatment by the services that they should be treated well by. So when it comes to your organisation, that is their only hope, ultimately. On the question of timeliness, the independent assessor notes that it cannot be right that a customer has to wait lengthy periods, on some occasions over a year, to be told their case does not fall within the service's remit. So why is it taking, in some cases, up to a year for the FOS to to check whether a case falls within your remit? Is there a specific systemic problem there that leads to taking it up to a year?
It's very rare that a jurisdiction question would take so long, but actually some of our cases that relate simply to is this a matter that we can look at are some of our more complicated and long-running cases.
Do you know how many cases there are that take over a year?
Yes, we've got 13, I think it's approximately 13,000 cases that are more than a year.
13,000? That's
Yes.
13,000 households or lives. Do you have much more kind of qualitative information about those cases and how these delays might be affecting them? Because you can imagine, if you're a business or you're an individual waiting for a complaint to be resolved, you could face further financial detriment, because the FOS is not able to deal with the case or tell them where they stand for up to a year, over a year.
Absolutely. 7,500 of those cases, there or thereabouts, are subject to legal proceedings, or in some cases the companies involved have gone into a scheme of administration and we've had to place those cases on hold. I still think that there's more that we could do to bring that number down, and that's part of the service standards that Baroness Mansour spoke to earlier. There's not a particular pattern when we look at those cases beyond the fact that many of them are impeded by matters beyond our control. But I would like to reassure you, we genuinely do take every case on its own merits, and we do really think about the customers that sit behind those cases. It's something that when I do floor walks, when I meet with my team in huddles, when we have our leadership team events, we will never do anything other than start with the customer and talk about how it feels for them, how we could improve, how we could get better.
Do you think you could write to us about the other, with more details on those 13,000, including, you mentioned the 7,500 involved in legal proceedings, and the other ones, what you plan to do and how you will plan to get those processed? That would be very helpful.
Yeah.
And some indication, obviously you'll need to anonymise, of the sort of issues you're dealing with to understand, so that we can understand why it's taking so long.
Yes, I'd be happy to, and in fact, if we can share the report that we prepared for the board, because this is absolutely an area of focus for the board too. And rightly so. I agree with the fundamental point. It's it's not appropriate to leave customers waiting for an answer, be they consumer or business.
A final question, which is related to the insurance market. One of the things from personal experience I've seen this, and it's come up in relation to the car industry and a range of others, around undervaluing what the insurance claim should be. And so you've got multiple players when it comes to insurance: the broker, the insurance company, the loss adjusters, and often another intermediary that makes payments. So things can get lost in translation, and you get extensive delays, which can cause problems. And then when a complaint's made, they will have up to 8 weeks to respond. It's not always clear whether you'll get a letter, I forget what it's called, so that you can take it to the FOS. So even before somebody goes to the FOS, there's multiple organisations involved where failures can occur. Have you looked at that sector and how it's affecting people, given these different contractors involved with insurance claims?
Yes, I think there's 2 parts to the question. So one, on the motor valuation side, that is actually a topic that our insurance team have picked up with a range of the insurers that we work with, just to understand their perspective and provide some guidance on how they might better deal with those complaints at source, or better still prevent those complaints from occurring. I think there are some there is a sort of an unusual element to our regulatory perimeter, which is that we are not able to deal with complaints related to credit hire companies, which sometimes can be the case in this.
Right.
We would always expect the insurer to be absolutely clear that if they are putting a case, if a vehicle or something is being put out for repair, the obligation of that insurer, we would absolutely expect them to make it abundantly clear to the consumer. What about household
insurance, where a company will have 2 or 3 organisations involved? An insurance company will have the broker, the loss adjuster, the institution that then has to make the payment, where they're not taking responsibility. They're required to, I understand. Yeah. They're not taking responsibility in terms of what happens in that supply chain linked to the customer. So the customer can have a really bad experience, and it can take months, sometimes well over a year, before they'll process a complaint. And actually, the problems can come at different levels within the sector. But the insurance company would just pass the buck for others to deal with it, not take responsibility, and keep sending people back to the loss adjuster or whoever, who can be often part of the problem.
The minimum we would expect is that the insurer makes it absolutely clear to a consumer taking out a policy exactly what they are covered for and where that coverage entitles them to refer a case to the Financial Ombudsman Service. But there are some instances in that supply chain that you described that we are not able to help because it falls outside of our jurisdiction. I think
it's one that I've raised it with the FCA.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rushanara. Andrea.
Thank you.